let's talk about cultivating an audience. This is something I've talked about in places here and there before, specifically with regards to commenters. I'm always saying that if you want good comments, you have to read and respond to them and let people know that you're reading them, because it creates this sort of positive feedback loop. If you want to see the best comment sections on YouTube, watch Idea Channel, and you'll understand how they got them, because Idea Channel has a comment response section in their videos. Now they have a whole separate video for it, where they just have a whole thing about addressing the best comments that they got. And what this has inspired is that people try to leave great comments because they want to get into the videos. It's affirmation. I've always had one of the best comment sections on YouTube because I answer my comments so much that people know I read them, and people know that they might get a response sometimes if they, leave a well thought out comment or start a discussion that I'm interested in participating in. It lets people know that, this is a place where that can happen. As opposed to a lot of the internet, people just don't expect anything out of comments. They think the creator doesn't care. They think they're just pissing into a void, that none of it matters. So that's one thing. But I also want to talk about cultivating an audience just in general, not just on YouTube. And especially like a fandom. Because let's focus this on fan art. Fan art fascinates me because fan art creates a loop of itself like nothing else I've ever seen before. If I were to go on Twitter right now and say, like, someone draw me a fan art, and someone did, and then I reblogged that, I would definitely get more fan art immediately afterwards. Not in response to the original tweet, but in response to me having retweeted it. It's maybe not the best example if I've asked for the fan art, but basically what happens is people are always inspired by realizing that something exists. Like, most of the stuff out there that no one cares about it because no one knows about it. And if you have something that's good and enough people see it that someone who will appreciate what's good about it sees it, then they're going to celebrate it and probably get inspired by it. And then if they're creative, they'll make something else, like, in its image. So, here's an example I just saw on Twitter the other day. Guillermo del Toro, the director who directed Pan's Labyrinth, Pacific Rim, you've probably heard of him. Guillermo del Toro was always a beloved director among, like, nerds and stuff, and even, film people. But he joined Twitter last year and became something like an internet folk hero. People love Guillermo del Toro. He has an infinite, like, he's always recommending cool shit, and he likes all the coolest shit. He loves anime and stuff, and he says all these great things that affirm nerd culture and make us feel good about the things we like. Guillermo del Toro is awesome. Someone made a fan art of him called Guillermo del Totoro, and it's him as Totoro from My Neighbor Totoro, with, like, his characters as other characters around him. So he reshares this tweet, and now more people are drawing Guillermo del Totoro. And he, in one of the drawings he received, he even said, keep sending more. So just because one person had the idea and then other people looked at it and went like, oh man, that's such a good idea, I want to draw that. Now there's going to be a whole genre of Guillermo del Totoro pictures. And I've seen this happen countless times. Even with Guillermo del Toro, with his film Crimson Peak, he tweets a lot of fan art for that film. Like, anyone who sends him fan art, he'll retweet it, and there's consequently shit tons of fan art for it. For a movie that probably would have never gotten fan art otherwise. Like, not to that extent, because a typical movie doesn't get tons of fan art, There's some movies that are obviously going to inspire it, like a Star Wars movie or a Disney movie. Like Zootopia, made for fan art. It was going to have a million things no matter what, because it plays into fan communities that already exist. But if you launched a new IP, I'm sure when Pan's Labyrinth came out, there probably wasn't a ton of fan art for it, because where would it have been posted? That movie came out in, like, 2006, 2005, something like that. You know, internet wasn't that big. Not a lot of places to share that kind of thing. Not a lot of people were going to see that film and go home and think, I'm going to make my own art based on that, you know. But when you're on the internet and the creator of the film is responding to people making that stuff, then, you know, people are going to see it and they're going to go, that's a good idea. I want to do that too, especially if they want affirmation from Guillermo del Toro. You know, you want to get retweeted yourself. So people will make that shit. So he makes this movie Crimson Peak, not even like a super popular movie, but it is very like artistically inspiring. So all it took was like 1 or 2 people making fan art for this movie and him tweeting it for it to become like wildfire. And I mean, there's a lot. Like every day he's retweeting fan art from this film. You know, I know because I follow him on Twitter. And I see this with a lot of creators where Justin Roiland retweets tons of Rick and Morty fan art. And as a result, there's way more Rick and Morty fan art than you would have ever expected from a show like Rick and Morty, you know, where the art style is not that great in the first place. And, you know, Adult Swim shows don't typically inspire that, you know. There's not a shit ton of Metalocalypse fan art out there because Twitter wasn't around back then. But, you know, and what's his name wasn't necessarily on there. So, yeah, it's really fascinating. And if you follow, like, Ego Raptor, this has happened a few times with him. There was a time where he posted, like, a picture of him dressed in, like, a female Sonic outfit, and, like, someone drew a fan art of it, he retweeted it, and then for days, he was just getting, like non-stop waves of fan art in him in that outfit. He posted these 2 original characters he had made, like, just random characters he designed. He posted them on Twitter, fuck tons of fan art for days, because he kept retweeting it all, so it just kept inspiring more and more, you know? And I think this is how we get stuff like the Brony fandom, where with Brony's shit, there was, like, so much of it. Like, it was so ridiculous how much stuff was coming out of that fandom. But the reason for that, and now, like, Undertale is kind of similar, but the reason it happens is that all it takes is one person makes a song based on the show. And then another person hears that song and they make a song as well. And then suddenly, like wildfire, everyone wants to make songs, especially if you have a way to promote those songs. With the pony fandom, it was Equestria Daily, this website that would post like fan content. And then, you know, people wanted to get onto that website and get recognition for making fan content. So there was suddenly just fuck tons of it. And I experienced this firsthand because I was writing analytical posts about the show and, you know, making videos out of it, which was something completely new. No one was doing it at the time. There were like 2 guys writing reviews of episodes, and I came in and was doing this analytical thing. And then like a couple of people sprung up who were kind of doing the same thing, but then, you know, like other people who were copying my style and being like, you've inspired me, you know. So already it was happening. The feedback loop was starting. But then I started writing for Equestria Daily and posting those people's stuff on there. And then it fucking exploded like wildfire. There was suddenly a fuckload of people sending me shit, you know, like making their own analysis videos and sending them to me because they wanted to get on Equestria Daily. They wanted that reaffirmation. And this is how fandoms become what they are. All it takes is one person making a thing and other people liking that thing, and then everyone's going to make that thing. And in a way, it sucks because like new intellectual properties have such a hard time breaking out in this climate. And there's so many people who now use these fandoms as springboards into making their own content. You know, there's so many people who make an original property and no one gives a fuck about it. So they then go and make tons and tons of fan content, and then they try to make original stuff that's kind of similar and get people into that. You know, there's always a huge drop off of interest. Or if you're like, the only way you can launch an IP is if you're famous. If you are Guillermo del Toro and you make Crimson Peak, you know, that film, I don't think it would have ever had a fandom just by coming out. It's because it was a Del Toro film and because he keeps reposting everything people make related to it that it's got kind of like, I don't know if it has a fandom, but it has a lot of fan content, you know, and probably maybe some of those artists have had a career launch through that. You know, maybe someone made a really awesome Crimson Peak painting and he reblogged it and people found that person and now they've, you know, got their own career. People are latching onto this stuff. And but what's interesting to me, and the reason I'm talking about this, because a lot of this is stuff you may have figured out for yourself, but the way it ties in with the whole comments thing is that it's kind of easy to cultivate this, to make a fandom act a certain way. If you want to see a good example, the podcast, The Biggest Problem in the Universe, like the kinds of stuff that gets sent into the show, because on the show they will read out people's comments, they'll play voicemails, they'll play they'll show off fan content that people have made, and like the kind of stuff people send in is extremely informed by what they've shown before. They tend to play voicemails that are really angry and funny and swear a lot and, you know, like insult the host and stuff like that. So they get mostly calls that do that. And you can tell a lot of the times when there's a caller who doesn't really have, like, that is not really angry, but they're playing up an angry persona because that's what they play on the show. And it's funny, you know, and they get a good reaction from the hosts. So they've cultivated this. They've created this idea. There's all these memes, all these things that get said on the show, like, over and over again, you know, like saying, "Dick, go fuck yourself," because it was something that people said at the end of voicemails and it just became a thing. It's like a part of the show's culture. And the hosts have cultivated it that way. They never had to mention that "Dick, go fuck yourself" was a thing that the audience said, but because they did, it became a standard thing, you know? And I think that if you want to have an audience who reacts to your work in a certain way, nudge them towards it. You know, like, if you keep making your audience understand your intent and what you want your work to be and what you want the interaction to be, then you can kind of cultivate a certain type. What am I doing with my hands? What is this? Cultivate a certain type of audience. I don't know if I feel like when I started talking about this, or when I had the idea to talk about this, I had a grander point to reach, and I'm not sure if I did. Doing this. Now I'm doing this with my hand. These are my gestures. Ooh.